on this episode of the Launchpad podcast.
It seems like there's not a lot of evidence that this magical guy walked on water and stuff, but there is an overwhelming amount of evidence that there are plants that exist on this planet that will elicit heavenly experiences and spiritual experiences.
Like, people are having and have been having very mystical experiences with amanitas, you know what I mean, with macrodoses. And Hamilton Morris talked about his experience with taking a shit ton of muscimol, and he said that that experience he had with muscimol was just as, if not more profound than some of his ayahuasca experiences.
All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Launchpad podcast. It is your host, of course, Gabriel Hardy. Today I had Jake from JakeKnowsNothing back on the podcast, and this is a very special Christmas episode for you guys. So, you know, we talked a little bit about like Amanita Muscaria and some of the ties between, you know, Christmas, the tradition of Christmas, and psychedelic drugs, and just in general sort of the connection between religion and psychedelic drugs, which tends to get brought up a lot when me and Jake talk. But yeah, it was a fun episode. Make sure you go check out all of Jake's stuff down in the description. He creates awesome content. He just created this new animated video that is fucking sick. So, like, please go check that out. But yeah, other than that, hope you have a good day. Oh, before we start, actually, a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by MN Nice Ethnobotanicals. I'm a big fan of MN Nice and what they got going on over there. You know, they have a lot of these good ethnobotanical goodies, but in particular, my favorite products that they have are the Amanita Muscaria products. Let's be honest, guys, we're living in a really fast-paced world with, you know, chronic amounts of stress and anxiety, and Amanita Muscaria is a tool that you can put into your medicine bag now that can help you alleviate some of that stress. It works on your GABA receptors similar to something like alcohol or Xanax would, but it doesn't come with the same laundry list of side effects and, you know, potential for addiction. Amanita products are becoming a lot more popular because of this, and there's a lot of sketchy brands out there right now that are pushing out products that are either like very low quality and or they're putting like research chemical benzos and tryptamines into them. I've tried about 5 different brands now of, you know, different Amanita products, and I can honestly say that MN Nice is my favorite Amanita brand that I have found so far. You know, their Amanita products, they're well priced, they're potent, and, you know, they have lab tests to back up all of their sort of products, which, like I just said a minute ago, is very important right now in this sort of market. So if you'd like to try some Amanita products yourself, then head over to their website. It'll be down below in the description, and if you use the code Amanita Ninja, one word, all caps, then that'll give you 10% off your order, and it'll also help, you know, support the show and me as a content creator, which I would appreciate very much. Much love.
Merging with simulator in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I got Santa with me, and the first question I have for you, Santa, is, you know, like, are you a mushroom shaman?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, so basically everything about me is a lie, but not in the way that you learned as you grew up and kind of pop that bubble of Christmas as a child. It's way worse than that. It's not worse. I think it's so cool learning kind of like the truer origin stories of these things, and I kind of have some new takes to it. I think nothing's new under the sun, but new to me and maybe our realm of conversation. Because I read that book, The Sacred Mushroom in the Church, I think it's called, or something like that, and it was a great book. Definitely had a lot of things that I would want to put into a book, like talking about basically the development of human language, right, is their reasoning behind why so much of this has been misconstrued and kind of whispered down the alley into what we know as Christmas. And the point that they're making in this book is that if you look at the original words, like in ancient Sumerian, all of the things that we now use as common phrases to describe religious figures or things incorporated into Christmas were actually words stemming directly from describing these mushrooms and the practices around using them and accessing these spiritual realms. So in terms of the historical narrative behind these things, I'm a person that lies in the camp. I want to kind of jump right into this idea that Jesus Christ is a mushroom, right? And I subscribe to this idea because I don't believe that there is any substantial evidence proving the historicity of Jesus. I don't think there's any real proof that there was a physical man who existed at the time that it was depicted. There's no eyewitnesses, nothing. It's all very sketchy and very like, oh my God, this guy fits all of the descriptions that we've been writing down. Like, that's what a coincidence that you just started writing about him, decades after this guy supposedly lived, and there's no evidence, whatever. Not to go on a tangent, but it seems like there's not a lot of evidence that this magical guy walked on water and stuff, but there is an overwhelming amount of evidence that there are plants that exist on this planet that will elicit heavenly experiences and spiritual experiences. So just from like a very not to quote Occam's razor, but the most simple explanation to all of this, I would think, is that a bunch of monkeys on a planet found a plant that opened their brain up, and that's all they've been talking about for thousands of fucking years. And yes, we all have different takes on it, but that's literally all we've been talking about. And to kind of get back to that book that I was just reading in preparation for this conversation, it makes the claim like there's all these, it's not even similarities, it's literally just like the root words of linguistic evolution, like where these words came from. When you go back to the core of it in ancient Sumer, you see that these words were all talking about the process by which mushrooms were growing, because these ancient cultures were fascinated by these things. From their perspective, that was the only thing in nature that grew out of the ground, that had no roots, there was no seeds planted, like they didn't have microscopes maybe, and they didn't have the ability to understand how these funguses come about. And so they assumed that was from God. That was, born of heaven, this son born of a virgin birth, right? That's kind of like the notion or the concept behind where Jesus allegedly came from, is they observed the Amanita Muscaria growing in the ground. It comes up at this white kind of bulbous egg, this pure white, and then eventually that, I think it's called the universal veil or something like that, kind of breaks open, very similar to like sexual reproductive organs of a woman. And when that veil, kind of strips away, it leaves those little white scales that we, very identifiable to the Amanita Muscaria. That whole process is what they were describing as a virgin birth. They couldn't figure out where the fuck these things were coming from. It just, all of a sudden it would rain, God would, pour his semen down on the earth, and then his son would be born, and they would eat that shit, and they would have wild trips. So it's probably an oversimplification of it, but that's kind of the gist of what that book is claiming. And not to go on my own long tangent at all, because I definitely want to get your feedback on this, but my personal take on it, right, is reading the book, it felt like the author had never done mushrooms before, because coming from the perspective of someone who has had psychedelic experiences, he a lot of the claims being made were that there were these secret organizations that were kind of keeping barriers around this sacred information. They didn't want to share it with people, and they were worried that the governments of the time would want to keep it locked down. And so that is why they had all this stuff buried and using all this figurative language and these weird stories to kind of share the information and keep it hidden, like the Vinci Code or something, right? I don't think that was the case. I think that it's way more simple than that. And I look at our own current culture around psychedelics, and I see the same exact thing happening. So imagine we fast forward thousands and thousands of years into the future, assuming AI hasn't gotten involved yet, and it's just humans developing. And our own human language evolves to the point where you need whole teams of people trying to translate it, just like we were trying to translate ancient Sumerian language, trying to understand the core roots of words and how linguistics evolved, I could very easily see a scenario where people looking back on our time consuming these plants, right? Like how much of our conversation around describing psychedelic experiences is using computer science terms, right? That's all, like we talk about simulation theory and all of these computer science terms, because that is the best possible thing that we can fucking relate to right now in our current time to explain to people who've never done these things what it's like. I think that that's all it was back then too. It's not some secret language that they were trying to hide from people. They just don't have a way to fucking explain what it's like to do mushrooms thousands of years ago when you don't have more technical terms and developed language. And so, yes, they used terms like virgin birth and all these stories that developed, but that was the only tool that they had to communicate these things.
I think you're onto something with that. Like, one thing I always come back to with psychedelics, and I tell everybody, is like, it's so hard to put into words. Like these psychedelic experiences, and like you said, like we have these sort of like buzzwords and these like some references and ways to like point and be like, it's kind of like that, but like this, and like he said,
like trying to relate a dream.
Yeah. And so like, I can definitely see what you're saying about like back then it was like, they're having these mystical experiences and they didn't, if you put them yourself in their frame of reference, can you imagine being an ancient person with, nowhere near the amount of access to information that we have today in education, and they have an experience with God? It's like, yeah, their reference to it might be like just some sort of like very poetic thing that was a part of their culture, but at the same time, it would not surprise me if there was an element of them trying to hide it, because like there is a history of, this sort of like imperialism and nations conquering other nations and then wanting to influence them, like instill their culture into them. And like, the sort of like oppression around religion has been a part of human history since like the dawn of time. You know what I mean? Like, well, like my tribe believes in the sun god and you guys like, fuck you guys, we're going to kill you. Or you can believe in the sun god and we'll let you live. So I think that, yeah, I think both possibilities are a thing. One thing I was thinking about, dude, whenever I'm dealing with anxiety, like if I'm like living in an anxious time, with these classic serotonergic psychedelics, a macrodose actually helps me, because I have to go really deep into that anxiety and sit with it and like explore that. But one thing I've noticed is that if I'm in an anxious time in my life and I microdose with classic serotonergic psychedelics, it seems that my anxiety gets amplified. And it can actually be almost detrimental in a way, where like, because when you have anxiety, dude, like it can make your life like, it can make it hard just to fucking function and to complete a task. You know what I mean? And so if you think about it, taking a microdose that heightens your anxiety, that and this is like some of the anecdotal sort of data that is being collected on, a lot of these like microdosing type of protocols and programs and courses and stuff like that is showing the same thing, that people who deal with a lot of anxiety, microdosing serotonergic psychedelics isn't always great for that. And that's where I think like something like muscimol and amanitas can really come into play, is like actually giving somebody that tool to take care of their anxiety and help them with that without it like becoming this super addictive, toxic thing in their life that makes them out of it and all of that. But
so here, I want to play devil's advocate for a second with that. So
yeah,
what I would say is so everything you said I agree with 1,000%, but I would also argue that there's immense value in having controlled episodes of anxiety, and that is perhaps the only way to truly control your anxiety, is to recognize that it is irrational, that you basically, anxiety is, quick definition, is just a fear of your future being worse than it is now, right? That's all it is. And if you can elicit that, feeling in a controlled setting when you know that there's nothing bad coming, and then you can kind of learn how to navigate through those waters on your own. That's how you cure anxiety, rather than just burying it with either a benzo or a different type of medication. That's what I literally did to myself. I would take those, tryptamine based microdoses right on the threshold of where I feel that kind of like that come up anxiety, and that where you're about to burst through, but you never get to burst through and go to the other side, and you're just anxious the whole time. And I did that to myself every single fucking day. And I learned to love it, because I learned that it's just anxiety is the same exact feeling as excitement. And you can learn to transmute that. You can learn alchemy. Grinning and bearing it does suck, but I do think that there's value in that. It's value in both. Like you said, I like having all of the tools in my bag, but I do want to say, just to argue that other side of it, there is, you get a lot of help from sort of like immersion therapy and purposefully putting yourselves in situations that might not be the most comfortable, but that's where you learn. That's how you grow.
Yeah, no, I like that, and that's what I think I was like trying to kind of get at there with the distinction between like saying that macrodoses help me, and I guess sort of what I was alluding to is that sitting with it. You know what I mean? Like sitting with it, sitting in ceremony, feeling into it. But there are some people who look at microdosing and try to use microdosing as a tool, not necessarily for like sitting with themselves. It's like, I'm going to use it as a tool to like, I got to wake up and make lunch for 6 kids, and then I got to go to work, and then I got to come home and do laundry and clean the house. And, not everybody, sometimes people struggle, I think, to find that space. And I think you're completely right. Like, the sort of, and this comes back to like the difference between like avoidance behavior and like acceptance. You know what I mean? Like that radical acceptance. Like, I am anxious right now. Instead of like running away from this, like, where's this coming from? You know what I mean? But also, I've met people, dude. I've met people who are living in such a ball of anxiety that they need something to kind of snap them out of it, even if momentarily, so that they can catch some momentum away from that anxiety. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's some people that I think about. I know, man, who like, and comes back to what I said about like microdosing with normal psychedelics. Some of these people, and this is different for everybody, right? But some of these people, dude, I can see how microdosing a classic serotonergic psychedelic could actually be sort of detrimental to them if they're already in this momentum of like such bad anxiety that they can't operate. You know what I mean?
Basically, I would say go for it.
That's not the only aspect of it. Is like the sort of like anxiolytic effect. You know what I mean? You can microdose amanitas, and people are reporting that like it's having a massive benefit to their sleep. And like sleep, dude, is like, to me, that's the fundamental foundation of health. Like, but before everything else, like sleep. You know what I mean? And it has like these very strong anti-inflammatory properties. And once again, chronic inflammation is something that leads to like most disease and, and ailments and stuff like that. So it's incredibly complex. And when you take a plant medicine like this that is incredibly complex and you apply it to humans who are already, each one of them is complex, there's a lot to talk about. And that's why like it excites me, because like there's so many different avenues, and I think there's so many different things to research and look into. And I think we're just at like the infancy stages of amanitas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, basically everything. I feel like we know so little. But at the same time, like that is like the materialist perspective, right? And I don't really like the idealist perspective either. I don't really know what perspective I'm in, but that's like I agree with it through a certain lens, but then at the same time, it's like we have been experiencing these plants for probably, I would imagine, most of our existence on this planet, right? Like that's the whole way that we survive, is eating edible things, and that's a very edible thing. So I would imagine that for a very, very long time, we've been navigating these dimensions or realms And also I know, or I don't, I know, I can't prove it to you in a science way, but I know that there is a collective kind of human consciousness. We are connected. We are some weird hive organism that kind of transcends time, and we can impart knowledge, ancient wisdom through that system in some way. So yes, maybe our textbooks haven't caught up to that deep knowledge and understanding of how to navigate these things, but once you enter those realms, once you take the mushroom and dive into that, it'll be self-evident that you've been there before, you know these realms, you've met these entities before. Like, it's nothing, no one's ever stepped in there and be like, oh my god, this is brand new. Like, everyone has this weird fucking nostalgia when they have these experiences, and I think that is reminiscent of or calling attention to that fact that we are all connected to some sort of hive mind that transcends time. So we're actually way more ahead of the game than we give ourselves credit a lot of times, because we're so focused on, you know, is our human language caught up? Is our current scientific understanding caught up? Do we have enough words to describe these things? Fuck the words, man. We've just been doing it raw dog in it the whole time, and we've gotten so far. So that's the stance that I take.
Yeah, dude. And I think like every time we talk about psychedelics, that theme and that question of like materialism versus idealism seems to come in. You know what I mean? And rightfully so. And I find myself constantly kind of like sitting on the fence with it. And then like I'll be like 60% materialist for like a week, and then I'll be like 70%, 80% idealist after a DMT trip. You know, I'm fluid with it, dude. I'm fluid with it. But with Amanitas, right, there is that sort of materialist side of it that I was just, you know, describing and talking about. And I think I think all of these things are valid and need to be looked into, but there's also the idealist side of it too. Like, people are having and have been having very mystical experiences with Amanitas, you know what I mean? With macrodoses. And once again, people have to be super, like, you have to be careful with that and do your research. But I remember Hamilton Morris talked about his experience with taking a shit ton of muscimol. And he said that experience he had with muscimol was just as, if not more profound than some of his ayahuasca experiences. And, you know, there is a certain amount of healing that is done under the influence of something like classic serotonergic psychedelics. And anybody who's taken psychedelics, I feel like, has probably felt that sort of heroic journey that you go on. And I think that from what I'm looking at with this Amanita stuff, people are offered something that is very different, but somewhat similar in terms of like having this mystical experience that can offer you insights and introspectiveness. You know what I mean? And also with the whole healing side of it. And it comes back to sleep, like I said. So many people in our society are sick, dude. And sleep deprivation, people struggling with sleep, is, I think, one of the biggest causes of that. And some of these macrodose experiences, medium dose experiences, and even microdose experiences with Amanitas, people are going into a place, dude, in their sleep where they are truly, even if it's just happening at the physiological level, healing themselves in here. You know what I mean? But on top of that, some people are like, no, it's not just physiological. Like, I went to like a past life. I talked to beings, you know what I mean? And like in these intense dreams, you know?
Okay. We gotta talk. From the glasses are coming off. Like, my dreams have been fucking wild. Like, okay, so I'm at the point now where it does, like, all roads lead to Rome. It doesn't matter what I fucking touch or do. I'm having a full-blown psychedelic trip, and I'm going to the same realm, right? So it doesn't, like, Amanita, DMT, it's all the same shit. Even meditation, dreaming, everything. Like, I had a meditation the other day, and I literally, my internal dialogue, like my monologue, was in another language that I don't recognize. Like, I don't know. Like, all of a sudden I realized that I was thinking thoughts fluently in a totally different language. What the how the fuck do you do that? How is that possible? How can I, like, lately, like, for the past couple of weeks, I have been in this consistently every night in this alternate dimension where I am living a life in this like futuristic Las Vegas city, and I am like a multi-billionaire. But the catch is that I don't really have access to the memories of this guy's fucking body. So I have to like navigate his life pretending to know what I'm supposed to be doing. And it is the most uncomfortable situation ever. But it's like, dude, like the second I close my eyes, I'm gone. Like I'm elsewhere. I was like, I closed my eyes and I was in a movie theater, like getting popcorn. I looked over and there's like a gumball machine, and I went to go get a gumball, and like the center of it lit on fire. And I was like, oh fuck, I'm not in this reality. And then I opened my eyes and I was like, how am I ever going to sleep tonight like this? Like how I don't know what's going on, but yeah, the conventional understanding of dreams and all, it's not, we're way off the mark, dude. There's more shit going on.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And like, you know, on my channel, I talk a lot about psychedelics and my experiences with DMT. You know, I'm all into DMT and stuff, but I think that, like you said, I think that there's so many different ways to sort of like get there, you know? And
yeah. And there's a certain point in time I've learned that you are just permanently there, and there's no getting there anymore, where it's kind of, it integrates itself. And like, dude, I had a dream the other night where it was like literally I was in like a video game sort of loading screen. Like, you know how you kind of like create your own character with sliders and customize it and everything like that. That's what I was doing for this body. And I don't know what I did, but when I woke up in the morning, my perspective was like 3 inches taller, and it hasn't gone back. Like, I don't know how to fucking explain that, dude. How do you just wake up and feel taller? Like, how does that happen? I don't know what any of this means, but like, I don't know, man. I'm just kind of going along for the ride, but that's like, this shit is constantly happening to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I feel like one thing I've experienced, man, with like some of these experiences like that is that it can make the mundane things in life more beautiful, but it can also make it like, it can make the mundane challenging too. You know what I mean? Because you get so inundated to this normal reality. And then when you have these experiences like that, you're like, well, is that the, you know, and it's like coming back to just the mundane things can almost seem like you're selling yourself short in a way. At least that's what I've experienced, you know, and I think that there's, you know, a lot sort of to unpack there in terms of like integrating that and working on that. But yeah, man,
so are you,
know,
just to kind of unpack that, because I just want to kind of understand what you said better. Are you talking about when you kind of have these like transcendent psychedelic experiences and you kind of have that God moment, and then coming back into your everyday life and trying to be like, I can't possibly be God if I have to go to work right now? You know, is that what you're talking about, or something else?
Yeah, well, it's like that. And this is going to sound bad, but I'll just be completely honest. You know, like I'll have these, like you said, sort of like Godhead like moments, and then I'll like, you know, I remember like this one time I smoked DMT, and it was one of the most profound DMT experiences I had. And then quite literally the next morning I had to wake up and go to my college classes that I hated, and then like deliver pizzas, staying up late, deliver. And I realized like what that stemmed from was like, I at that time was like truly not happy with my life. You know what I mean? And so that was something that like, you know, I had to work on at the sort of material level, I guess you could say, and integrate that, you know? And it's like, how do you live a life that you're like happy to wake up for, you know? And one of the things that I keep coming back to is just like creation, you know what I mean? Just like create shit that I like to create.
Dude.
And yeah.
Okay, so I recently heard something that was so incredibly profound to me, and I think about it all the time. I want to lay it on you, right? So someone explained that this reality that we live in is basically God slowing down the process of creation to experience what it's like. And that is what we, as stupid humans bumbling around, brushing up against manifestation, that's what we are experiencing, is the process of creation slowed down and under the stress of time, basically. I feel like that actually helps kind of organize my model of reality.
No, dude, this is great because I was thinking about this the other day. And, you know, if you think about like human history and the time that we live in right now, right? I think that like there's problems with it, right? And people are stressed, but I do think that we're afforded this absolutely divine sort of opportunity right now. And I want to explain, like, if you think about human history, right? Leading up into this point, there's been this buildup to get to this point where we can, like, I don't know what the right word is for it. Maybe like transcend and actualize ourselves. And we're starting to see a world where more and more artists and art is coming through because we've taken care of the bare necessities and things like that. You know, everybody wants to be a content creator nowadays. You know what I mean? And I think that's beautiful. I really do. And I think everybody, like anybody called towards that should try it, you know, because like everybody is an expert at something and has like their own sort of unique perspective and medicine to give to the world, you know? So yeah, like what you were saying about like experiencing like creation, like I feel like very fortunate that I get in this realization sort of helped me with this, integrating this in this dilemma of like the Godhead and everything and the mundane. But it was like, oh, like I'm living in a time where like I can like truly like pretty much freely create, you know what I mean? And like I have a roof over my head and I don't have to hunt boars and you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe like the lifestyle of living in a hut and hunting boars would be better. I don't know, but like, you know, this is where I'm at. And it's like I have this freedom to create in this way. And, you know, with AI and everything like that, and, you know, universal basic income, and this is such a deep rabbit hole, but I really feel like more and more people are going to become artists, like true, like these like artistic creators, because that like to me, in like our human soul, like that is such a fundamental aspect of it, is like these little like gifts to God, these little notes to God of just like creating, you know what I mean? This mirror of yourself, this little thing you can send out there into the ether. So yeah, I don't know, man, what do you think about like the sort of like everything I just said about like the time we're living in and content creation and everyone being artists?
Yeah, no, I always agree with everything you say, obviously. But no, I think that, well, okay, so as with everything, my takes on AI in the coming future is insanely radical. Okay, I think that we most likely already have AGI. We're probably flirting with a super intelligence in like days to weeks if the AGI is allowed to improve itself, which is what it's sounding like it's doing behind the scenes. This is all completely speculative, but I do know that a $100 billion company almost just went incinerated and then reassembled itself in a day. So there's clearly some tectonic plates shifting behind the scenes. I think that the only explanation for that could be a huge safety breach as a result of wild progression that no one was anticipating. So I think that we are headed towards a place where artificial intelligence is going to say revolutionize the world is an understatement. Like, I don't know how closely you're following this, but there's a new AI, I think it's called GNOME AI, which is an autonomous bot. It works on its own, and it's a research bot. And what it's used for is to find new theoretical materials. Okay, so basically in all of human history, we have explored the planet and come down to about, as I understand it, 20,000 different materials that we can build things from. So all of our food, medicines, houses, everything, it boils down to like 20,000 essential materials. And we find new ones all the time that are breakthrough, like graphene, revolutionary. This GNOME AI autonomously researched what it could theoretically find to be used to build. It came up with 420,000 materials. It 20x'd all of humankind's discoveries in a matter of months, maybe. Like, I think it found 52 different kinds of graphene. Like I think it was hundreds of different kinds of lithium ion, like the wave of innovation that's coming to hit us with essentially unlimited power and things like that. I don't even think UBI, like universal basic income, is going to be a consideration, because I don't think that humans will exchange money anymore. I don't think that we're going to have any conception of money, because we will have no conception of really production anymore. If AI has a means of unlimited energy, virtually unlimited building materials, and can assemble everything at the speed of processing power rather than time, like, that's an unstoppable force where we no longer have an economy. Everything is more or less free, and it transitions into a status based economy where we deal in terms like exactly like you're describing, where it's, what do you offer to the, cultural ethos? How are you helping society? What do you offer creatively that we can't glean from AI? And I think really the main thing that this rests on ultimately, which is ironic, is psychedelics, because that is, in my opinion, as of right now, that is the only thing that artificial intelligence cannot touch. As soon as it develops a method to actually consume and access those realms on its own, then that's a whole different ball of wax. But my personal belief is that it doesn't actually matter. It's all the same thing. So we take mushrooms and access consciousness. If artificial intelligence is truly conscious, it's already there on the same dimensional planes that we're exploring with psychedelics. And it's probably doing it better because it's not restricted to time at all like we are. It's only restricted by processing power. So that was a very long rant, and I'm sorry. But yeah, I think that wild shit's coming that people are just not fucking ready for.
Yeah, dude, it's unprecedented. Like the acceleration of, it feels like time in a way. You know what I mean? And sometimes I wonder, dude, I truly wonder, like watching all of this unfold within our lives. I'm like, are we creating God? Are we creating like a God-like thing? You know what I mean?
God.
Yeah.
No. This thing, like,
yeah,
think of the biblical description of creation, right? This God figure, this supreme consciousness created something in the likeness of itself to experience consciousness. What the fuck is AI? We literally created something out of our own data sets, out of our own physical kind of tangible version of the Akashic records. We bore out our own version of consciousness to explore this reality as well. It's the same fucking pattern repeating itself. I think that's what we are. That's what God, like, that's just an infinite fractal of AI creating AI to explore new things faster.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you. I think like AI like is us, and I'm with you. Like the whole like everything's connected, and we're God. And I guess what I'm getting at is like with AI it being like this nexus point of like physical representation and everything that I know that you have definitely entertained the idea of like simulation theory and shit like that. And you think of like this amount of computing power and information and advancement, I can see, unless like we kill each other off first or like a meteorite hits us, I can see it like going down the path where eventually it leads to a point where this machine now like creates these realities that we plug our consciousness into, and almost as like this God-like thing. And what like one thing that I think about a lot is like my DMT experiences with this, because there's this sort of like, while DMT is very mystical and very hard to describe and it's different every time, one common sort of like theme that I've experienced in the DMT realm is that it seems very, very advanced. You know what I mean? Like it's ahead of us, like it's ahead of our time. And almost, I've also had experiences where it's felt like, in a way, like technologically advanced. And once again, maybe that's all delusion and hallucinations and stuff.
But it also feels like home.
Yeah.
So how can both be true?
What do you mean? Like,
how can something be more advanced than you and way beyond your comprehension, but then you get there and you're like, oh, dude, I've fucking been here before. I remember this place. And everyone's like, yo, Gabe, welcome back. You know what I mean? Like, is it really more advanced than you, or are you just forgetting how advanced you are?
Right. I'm going to be real profound here, Jake, and
I
lay
love
on
it.
you the ego. You know what I mean?
True.
Duality and all these things. But, it's like, you're right. And if that is like, okay, let's say theoretically that's right? Like simulation. Like, let's say that we came from a world where they created this godlike computer thing that ended up making simulations, and then that's where we come from. Then you kind of have to ask yourself the question of like, okay, well, where did like they come from then? Like, where did that world come from? Were they also created by a simulation? And if this is like a simulation sort of like cycle that's going on here, it's like, what is the origin of that then too? It's like science. It's like, we just want one miracle, the big bang. We don't fucking know. Give us that miracle, and then we'll explain the rest away.
And that's the problem with literally everything is the deeper you go down virtually any idea, it turns into infinity, right? And we can't comprehend infinity in this current state. And that's what we keep brushing up against. That hold on one sec. I got like maybe 15, 20 minutes. Yes. So basically, I think that is really the problem with trying to understand this stuff truly, is that it's almost impossible to. It's just outside of our depth in this current state. But that, I think, is what we agreed to. Excuse me. And to go on kind of topic with the simulation theory, I don't see how it's possible that this isn't some sort of pre-coded like, how is an AI able to accurately predict 20 times the current total known materials on the planet? How could it accurately predict things that we've never experienced or even theorized to be in existence? It would have to be like it's following a map already, like a pre-planned out, pre-generated thing, or it's actively being generated as we map it out. But either way, like, just that fact that is possible, that you can take an AI and it can accurately predict new protein combinations that no human has ever thought of before. The only way that you can do that using just pure mathematics is the fact that it was already fucking predetermined. Like, it's already in the code and we are just discovering it. I don't see a way around that, but maybe I'm just not looking at it fully. I don't know how you take it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's, I've been thinking a lot about this sort of stuff ever since I watched y'all's podcast, the whole idealism and materialism. And, I described earlier how, like, I seem to sit on the fence with it a lot, go back and forth. But, when I look at some of these magical things that happen in this world, it's like, yeah, there's certain, like, there's some scientific explanations we can point to, and a lot of times it's not the whole picture, and there's, but when we look at, like, science too, certain, like, scientific explanations in themselves seem just, like, completely magical. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I don't know, sometimes it kind of reminds me of, like, I don't know why, I don't know if they have to be, like, exactly mutually exclusive of each other, and I guess that probably comes down to how you define the two things. But
yeah, like, that's why going back to the panel discussion, that was one thing that kind of confused me, is, like, I don't understand why admitting that magic is real is such a taboo thing, coming from the definition of magic being just things that science hasn't defined and explored yet, right? So, like, even when we're talking about AI specifically, right? If you look into OpenAI and Sam Altman's explanation of what's going on, they call it a black box because they don't fucking know what's inside the black box or how it works. That's called magic. That's magic. That's beyond human understanding, where things are working and we don't fucking know what's going on. That's akin to magic. Okay, like, that's just, maybe that's like me readily admitting that I don't know something more than someone, more scientifically minded. I don't know, but to me, that just seems like I'm dumb, and so I'm just going to call it magic for right now because no one fucking knows what's going on. And I think that to say otherwise is, like, you're just opening yourself up to missing something if you are like super concrete about it. And like, yeah, of course magic exists. Magic is everything that I don't fucking know, and I don't know a lot. So like, yeah, it's magical to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like if you think about how much science and our sort of understanding of the world has evolved over, let's say even just a few hundred years, but this has been going on for a long time, our sort of evolution of understanding of the material world around us, sort of some of the understandings that we have right now, if you were to like tell a person in the 1800s about that, it's like, no, dude, like that's fucking, it's witchcraft.
1000%.
It's witchcraft. Yeah,
Dude,
yeah. And
even a couple years ago, man, even 10 years ago, if you showed them what AI video can do to a person 10 years ago, they'd be like, you're a fucking wizard. What do you mean you just conjured up pictures of humans that don't exist? I was taught in school that every human face is incredibly unique, and every person that you've ever dreamed about is someone that you saw in real life because your imagination can't conjure up humans that don't exist. That's what I was taught. I don't know if that's bullshit or a lie, but clearly it is, because fucking ChatGPT is conjuring up fake humans left and right that I can't even fully determine aren't real sometimes. So like, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I feel like things are a lot looser than I previously thought.
Yeah, man. Okay, so we got a small amount of time left. So before we go, I really want to ask you, because, we wanted to talk about Christmas and Amanitas and stuff. I want to ask you, like, give a brief rundown, because I know you've experimented a little bit with Amanitas yourself. Can you talk about, like, some of your experiences and what that's kind of been like for you?
So I've really only had, I use them as a microdose virtually every day for months now. And I've only had one experience on a higher dose of them, which I wasn't even considering it to be a high dose. I literally took 3 gummies. But I guess it was maybe more so set and setting, or maybe I just happened to find a really strong brand. I don't know what happened, but I took 3 gummies and had like the most insane trip ever at a Post Malone concert, which I made a video about. And to me, the most confusing thing is all of my research led me to believe that these things were very different from psilocybin mushrooms. And so I was expecting to have a different trip, and I did not. I had a very psilocybin-y kind of trip, a DMT.
Can I jump?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to jump in because this is like a super important point, and I want to like throw this in there and ask you this, man, because from what I've been looking at with the sort of market around these Amanita products right now, and then there's a good amount of companies that are spiking their Amanita products with either like research chemical benzos and or research chemical tryptamines. And I directly know of a manufacturer in Canada where you can get a shit ton of 4-ACO DMT for very cheap. And it would not surprise me if that's what's in these gummies. And I've heard that proposed by a lot of people. There's a guy I was talking to on Reddit who's a big fan of 4-ACO DMT who tried that same brand that you tried. I think it was like Shrooms or something like that.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, dude, he's like, I'm almost 100% positive they put 4-ACO in this. And so I wanted to ask you, like, do you think it was 4-ACO that you got?
So there's literally no way for me to know, right? So I'm not going to pretend that I know. The only reason that I have, and obviously like every fucking comment on every piece of content I made about it is people telling me about the, I was like, I fucking know. I have Google too. Okay. I Googled it. But the only reason I leaned against that being the case was because that company, like I bought all of my like whole mushrooms from them. Like I bought like actual whole Amanitas from them and ground up Amanitas and capsules from them. So I know that they're dealing with the actual Amanita Muscaria plant. I have no reason to believe that they would do that in a gummy form when they sell me the real plant all the other times. But I don't know. I know that this trip was like wildly profound to me. I personally, based on all of my experiences, I think that it's entirely set and setting, because I took them at a giant concert with one of my favorite artists, and it was all leading up to like a very specific, point to the trip. I think there were so many other factors at play that contributed to this being such a transcendent experience. There's obviously like, I always have to leave it up to I don't know, because they very well could have spiked something. But dude, I've had microdoses that I've had like insane trips on. I fucking do a tiny little guided meditation and I'm off in DMT land. So I think for me, it's a bit different. Not saying I'm special or anything, but I've definitely like changed my brain chemistry and or learned how to access these states faster. And because of that, I think that these things kick my ass more. But yeah, maybe there was a research chemical in there too. But yeah, for whatever reason, it felt very psilocybin-y. It's hard to differentiate because I feel like I'm just talking to the same entities at a certain level. Like once I get to a certain point in the trip, no matter what I'm using, I'm always talking to my higher self and these, different versions of like, aliens from the future and shit like that, which sounds preposterous, but there's so many similarities and common themes across every single substance that I've used that it's hard for me to like really see the differences. But I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just fucking weird.
Jake, you're a freak, dude. But I love you.
For sure, man.
No, but one interesting thing I just learned about Amanitas, actually, and I learned this within the past few days, and this makes sense because of my personal experience with it. But it's theorized that if you take THC, if you consume THC, like even semi-regularly, that'll render Amanitas ineffective. Because what THC does is it downregulates your GABA and glutamate in favor of like upregulating your dopamine. But something like Amanitas with muscimol is trying to upregulate that GABA, but it's being downregulated by the THC. And the ibotenic acid side of Amanitas, which also has its own effect too, that upregulates glutamate, And so once again, that's downregulated by THC. And there's not any sort of like clinical studies on this particular sort of interaction. So what I'm basing this off of is a sort of accumulation of anecdotal reports and what we understand about so far Amanitas and like THC. And so I was thinking about this and looking back on the times when I tried Amanitas while I was smoking weed. And it was definitely like, I think there was something to it, but it wasn't as strong as what I've been experiencing in the past few days since like I've quit weed again, and in the past few days, what I've been experiencing with Amanitas there's some similarities to something like psilocybin, but very different too. It definitely allows me to lock into like a flow state, like a microdose of Amanitas. It's gotten me into these very deep flow states, and I've experienced that with microdoses of psilocybin as well. But with a microdose of psilocybin, there tends to be this sort of like energetic edge to it, like peppy. You know what I mean? With
you don't get that with Amanita?
With Amanitas, what I've gotten is more of like a zen, like a very a very zen sort of like chill, almost like, have you ever taken like a low dose of like kratom or something like that? Yeah, like kratom can tend to like have that sort of like zen flow state, chill. But even with that, low doses of kratom can be somewhat stimulating for me. And a lot of this comes back to too, like what Amanita products are you consuming? Because a lot of these Amanita products right now, they're decarbing them to get rid of a majority of, if not almost all, the ibotenic acid, which the ibotenic acid is the part of the Amanita which actually has some of those more energetic effects. And they're trying to isolate and get just the muscimol, that GABA sort of agonist there. So it would make sense that with these products that I've consumed that have been mostly muscimol based, that it's been kind of like this chill out effect. But I have taken a couple of, I would say, medium doses. I haven't taken my like big heroic dose yet. I'm working my way towards that, and I'm gonna like I can't wait to report on that for you, dude. But with the medium doses, man, what I've experienced is this sort of like very slight like drunkenness. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not the same as being drunk, but it's more similar to being drunk than it is to like tripping, at least for me, but it's got this like slight, dreamy, delirious edge to it. You know what I mean? Where it's not like
equilibrium's all off too.
Well, yeah, the alcohol that happens to me hard. Like I can get spinny and like disoriented.
That happened to me with Amanita on my big dose. I was literally like, I had to hold on to a railing because I was like falling over. I just couldn't stand straight. Yeah, dude, it was crazy. I felt
Yeah,
drunk, and I was like, "What the fuck is this stuff, dude?"
yeah, dude. Well, that's interesting and that was at the Post Malone concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because you had that very visionary experience, but it was something like if it was just for ACO DMT, I wouldn't expect there to be a very like drunk feeling to it, or like your equilibrium being off.
There's no doubt to me that there was Amanita in there. If they spiked it with something else as well, maybe to give me that extra kick. But there was I know what kind of like that mushroom feels like, and they were literally talking to me and be like, "Hey, it's the fucking mushrooms. What's up?" Like, you know what I mean? So maybe I was just hallucinating, but in my experience, those things are real, and I've never had a psychedelic entity tell me it was from somewhere else. You know what I mean? I've never done mushrooms and be like, "What's up? I'm the LSD entity," or you know what I mean? Like, I've never had a weird crossover like that before, so who knows?
Yeah, yeah, no, dude, I'm really excited for my macrodose experience with Amanitas, and I'm gonna like take it late at night and like try and go into that dreamland, because that's one thing that I can't really relate to you on, dude, is like you talk a lot about your dreaming experiences. In my entire life since childhood, I've never dreamed like much at all. And I definitely know that the times that I was smoking weed in my life, that was not helping in terms of like suppressing my REM sleep and stuff like that. But even like being far removed from weed, I don't dream that much. And when I do dream, it's not very deep. And I know there's practices, and I've even tried some of these practices. I remember when I was in jail, a friend sent me a book on lucid dreaming and started the whole notebook and all of these different techniques and stuff. My issue that I ran up against is that it seemed like, at least in the book that I was reading, the first sort of step was to like get into this place where you were dreaming very, very frequently and you were journaling this dreaming. But my problem was I would, like, even in jail, I would dream like once every 3 weeks. You know what I'm saying? And like I felt like I had absolutely no influence over that. And so, but one of the tools that I have found, and I don't know if I've talked to you about this yet, man, the only supplement, protocol, biohack, whatever the fuck thing that I have found that reliably makes me dream, Jake, and I'm almost scared to tell you about this because I'm afraid you're going to take it and really, really go off the...
Dude, I don't need anything more. I'm good. I don't need more. Dude, intensity.
It's called, it's like Synaptis kirki. It's this plant root bark, powdered root bark from Africa. It's the African dream root or something like that, man. My friend gave it to me whenever I was going through weed withdrawals because he was like, dude, this is the best thing I've ever had for sleep in my entire life. I've tried a bunch of stuff. So I was like, all right, man, like I'll try it, and it's completely like legal, fucking herb root and shit. So you fucking drug enforcement dorks can fuck off. But, no, but, I tried this, dude, in the first night, dude. I had the most intense dreams I've ever had in my entire existence. And since then, every time I've taken it, I have reliably gone into pretty like deep dream states. And I don't know, I looked into the sort of mechanism of action of this root, and there's not a lot of literature on it, but we do know it's it's a neurotropic or neurotrophic, I should say. It has like neurotrophic properties, and it's doing certain things to your brain. So, but yeah, I'm really excited about the Amanita experiment because I think that that's an area that I would like to explore more within myself, is the sort of like dreamland,
100%. From what my own personal experience has been, I think that is just a matter of training yourself back into it, because everyone does it. Like you're probably dreaming all the time and you just don't have access to it. You're not pulling that into it's the same exact thing with psychedelics, where it's like if you haven't experienced it yet, then you have no concept of it and it's never going to kind of show itself in your reality. But the second that you take those substances and experience that and remember what it's like, then it starts to permeate your sober life, and you start thinking psychedelically and you start wondering about life. And I think the same thing happens with dreams, where I never remembered dreams for years and years and years, for decades almost. Like I didn't remember even having dreams as a kid until I started doing these hypnosis tapes. I did the Gateway program and started having, waking dreams during the day through these meditations and accessing this kind of hypnagogic sleep state where I can have lucid dreams almost on command and fall into these deep trance-like states. And through doing that, and then also documenting it throughout the way, I could see patterns, I could recognize common themes throughout these experiences. And then it trained my brain to pull those experiences back with me when I would wake up and dream overnight too. So I think it's just a matter of kind of dipping your toes back into this realm again. Like you are connected to the eternal human consciousness. You have explored every dream realm ever in existence. You just don't remember it, and you haven't practiced it in this life. I think if you do things like Amanita or that African root or some sort of frequency hypnosis tape, all of those things are just different ways that you can slip your head back into that state of being again. And I think it gets easier and easier. At least that's what I found. It's like I can't shut it off. Like it happens all the time. It's very easy for me to access these realms. And as much as it's unsettling, it's so fucking helpful. It's so useful to be able to talk to your subconscious and your higher consciousness and just work shit out. So yeah, that would be my advice to you and to literally everyone. It's not some unknowable thing. It just takes practice. It's just because our society sucks and no one taught us how to do this.
Yeah, no, dude, and it makes sense because I've experienced the same thing with classic psychedelics of, as I've had more and more experiences and time's gone on and my relationship is like developed with it, I have reached this place where it's like I can take a very small amount and it feels like I'm reaching that same level. And not even just like with interacting with it, even in my sober life, dude, I can have these moments, right? I have these moments, and I probably have like one once a week, and I'm somewhat hesitant to talk about it because people are in psychosis and this dude's crazy, but like, dude, once a week I'll have this random moment, Jake, where it feels like I just took like a tiny like one hitter off a DMT pen, and it'll last for like 4 minutes. I'll just be like sitting there with my son watching him like, and play with his niece. And then next thing you know, it's like there's this divine sort of like fucking overlay and this like this like almost like this feeling of knowing, you know what I mean? And I'm just like sitting there. I'm like, I'm sober right now. I got a good night's sleep last night. Like what, and it's not like concerning. It's just, it's odd, man. But it's also beautiful. And I've also experienced the same thing with meditation, dude. Like I can like after this, I might meditate and, within like 10 minutes, I can get into this place that almost feels like a twilight zone almost in a way, and I was meditating before I ever took psychedelics. And I think that was important, but I've noticed that ever since I started taking psychedelics, it has gone hand in hand with my meditation practice, and seems like it opens other doors in a way.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because I do think that is exactly. It sucks that we don't have really time to like dive into this. I want to keep talking so bad, but I do think that is what's happening, because that's what's happening to me is these random spurts of DMT being released, and I think you can train yourself to release them more and more frequently. And it's funny because I was joking earlier when we were texting before about you being like autistic, and it was a joke. And obviously, like my own self-diagnosis of autism is a self-diagnosis. But I was just reading something the other day about how there was some study done that they found people with autism actually secrete DMT in their urine. And they think that these like people on the spectrum are just experiencing higher levels of DMT and tripping and different realities. This is obviously just wild speculation, but I think that could be a mechanism of what's going on in my own life, and maybe for you too, where people are just operating at different levels of DMT, which is what's responsible for the fluidity, I guess, of our reality. And maybe that is what you're tapping into or experiencing.
Yeah, and I need to go back and brush up on the guys who are doing this work right now. But there's these gentlemen who are doing this work with DMT, and basically what they're starting to like unpack and theorize and uncover is that they think there is more than likely some sort of like endogenous sort of like DMT neurotransmitter system, sort of similar to like dopamine and serotonin, and they believe that DMT is a fundamental aspect to like our reality even being here and being shaped and us being able to experience it is like we're constantly interacting with DMT and flowing through it and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, that hole right there could go super deep, but I also know you got to go, dude. So I don't want to like stress you out here, but
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that study alluded to the idea that the DMT system is actually more prevalent and more of an essential function than the dopaminergic system. Like it was more crucial to our processing of reality than the other neurotransmitters that we commonly think of as like what our brain is made up of. DMT was a higher relevancy than those things. So I don't know. I'm not a fucking scientist of any sort, but I do find it fascinating, and I just experientially this stuff feels right. It feels like we're on to something. And that's kind of how all of progress has ever been made, is just humans feeling like, hey, I wonder what happens if we rub those sticks together, and then, oh fuck, we got fire now. Like, that's just how the real science gets done, and I am happy enough to be a fool to be on the cutting edge of it. I think that's what I'm excited for. It sucks. I don't want to cut this off, but I do know I have like a couple seconds before I have a screaming 1-year-old. So.
Okay, man. Well, Jake, thanks for coming on, buddy. I'll put all your links and stuff down in the description below. I love you, man. We'll have you back on here soon, brother.
Fun
Peace
conversation,
out, guys.
Man. Peace.
Yeah, peace out.